Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the RepPath Podcast. Guys, today we have a great show because we're going to talk about transferable skills and how you transition from something other than the typical B2B sales background. So we're going to look at retail, we're going to look at teaching, customer service, and a few other backgrounds, but the main thing that you want to take away from this is how to show your transferable skills to become an effective medical sales candidate. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, as always, guys, some quick housekeeping. Anybody that wants to see a copy of this podcast or any other content that we have, please go on my YouTube channel, the RepPath Academy. You can click the link below, subscribe. It's 100% free, so you can get a ton of great content, especially all the recorded podcasts that we have in there. Next, guys, I say it every week. Anyone that hasn't looked into the RepPath Academy and is struggling to break into this industry, please do so today. Go on reppath.com, check out our website. You could see some of the commonly asked questions. You could see the companies that we've helped place for, some of the statistics about our placements, and most importantly, look at those testimonials. Review those videos of real candidates and real write-ups at the bottom of the website, because these are people just like you guys that didn't know where else to turn. They were struggling on their own. They reached out to us. We'll help them get them placed quickly. So please do me a favor and check out that site. And if you want to shoot me a DM to get more information, please, do so via LinkedIn. Lastly, guys, any questions that you have, please make sure you submit it into the chat, and James will, take care of them throughout the podcast, and we'll take a break about halfway through to address any questions from the crowd. Okay, perfect. So back to business, guys. So we're going to talk about entering in from the non-typical B2B sales background. So a lot of you out there that are working at companies like ADP, Paychex, Enterprise, getting your sales experience, getting your sales results on the resume, it's still a very, very tough process. And just because you do that doesn't mean it's going to be a cakewalk to break in. At the end of the day, what these guys really care about is it doesn't matter where your background is, guys. We have placed individuals from every background you could possibly imagine. People with no sales experience, waiters, busboys, teachers, lawyers, physicians actually that transferred into medicine, customer service reps, people with limited work history, even some individuals that didn't go to college, that have 4-year degrees. It doesn't matter, guys. The key is you need to highlight your transferable skills. That is the most important factor. If you can't highlight that, even if you're a seasoned sales rep, if you can't highlight what you've done in your past and what you've learned, what skills you've attained, and how you can apply them into this medical sales role, then it doesn't matter. But you can do that no matter what your background is. And that's the purpose of our call today. Because I'm sure a lot of you guys see out there that, most of these roles, they seem like they always say entry-level role. Now, for me, a typical entry-level role is right out of college, no work experience whatsoever, and then you can break into whatever industry. In medical sales, it's not like that. Now, there's definitely reps right out of college that break in, but there are many roles that they expect some previous experience. Now, it doesn't have to always be B2B, right? And that's what we're going to talk about. But the most important thing they want to see is whatever you were doing in your past, you can jump ahead of everyone else in the interview process by really highlighting those transferable skills and showing how they relate to the medical sales world. Because if you can do that, it shows them that you put the work in to really understand not only medical sales as a whole, but that specific opportunity. And that comes with a lot of research, a lot of phone calls to reps, a lot of extra work. But if you can relay that message, that's what's going to help you jump ahead of everyone else. So let's dive into some common other jobs that people apply with and think, because I hear it all the time. Well, Joe, I'm in retail. It's not really sales. I know it's not typical B2B. So I don't think I'd be a good candidate. Or, I think I need to get more experience somewhere else. No, you could always do that, guys, but you're shooting yourself in the foot because you have great experience. Now we just got to talk about how that translates to medicine. So let's start with retail. Okay. So if you're in a retail background, you work, say, for instance, like my wife, she owns a department store. We have many reps that work for us there that, they're not in a typical B2B sales role, but there's some excellent salesmen that we have in our facility. I mean, they're just some studs that work for us. And what they do, just to position what you're doing in retail, there's a couple of things that you're doing that relate to the medical sales world. Number one, you're dealing with a high volume closing. You're dealing with high volume closes. Okay. You got customers coming in all the time. All right. And there's a lot of medical sales roles that they can't just get one big sale that's going to carry them through the quarter. If you're a pharmaceutical rep, I mean, you could have thousands of scripts written in your territory, and you need 1,000 more if you want to get on the leaderboard. So that's high volume. But that's what you're doing. You're doing it at a high volume rate in retail too. So that's a similarity between the two. You're also handling objections constantly. I see these reps in our store. They don't just have people come in and just whatever they want. They just tell them what to get. The customer buys it and they walk out. No, they come in. Sometimes they don't know what they're looking for. You'll have the sales rep come up to them, offer, do you want this shirt? I think these pants will go great, and they're constantly getting a lot of objections. I'm sorry, that's too much money. I don't like that color. Do you have anything that's a little bit bigger, a little short? It's constantly handling objections. That's what you're doing every day in medical sales. There's not a doctor out there that hasn't given an objection before. Every time you're walking in, you have to anticipate that you're going to be handling objections. You have to be prepared for those objections. But that is a key skill that you acquire in the retail space that can help you in medical sales. Next is reading buyer behavior. I mean, this is a key skill. I mean, one of our managers at the store, he's someone that totally excels in this. He doesn't just put anything on the customer. That doesn't do anything. Yeah, he could get the one big purchase, but that's not going to keep the people from coming back. He really sees what they're looking for, what looks good for them, what is more that relates to their behavior. He's not going to just throw things in front of them, especially when he gets to know these customers, because he understands their behavior. He understands what they're looking for. He knows their needs. This is probably the most crucial thing that you can learn in retail is understanding your buyer's buying behavior, your customer's buying behavior. That's exactly what you need in medical sales. You have doctors that they all have different drivers. Some could be mostly costs. Some could be, interaction with their staff. Some could be the efficacy of the drug, the steerability of a sheath. I mean, there's so many different things that customers need, but the whole thing is you don't assume. You have to learn your customers' key drivers and then sell towards them. And that's what you do in retail. So you bring that skill. That's a crucial skill to bring into medical sales. And lastly is driving revenue. I mean, you have to drive revenue. I mean, all our staff, they all have goals. They have to meet their monthly goals, their yearly goals, and they get bonused on that. That's everything in medical. Whether you're in device or pharma, you're going to get a quota and you're going to get paid depending on how you hit that quota or not. Okay, so that's, again, all these mirror what you do in medical sales. You just got to highlight that. So one of the sentences that, because a lot of times people undersell, like, oh, I was just in retail. No, you want to get more specific. Okay. And here's a key sentence that will give you a good angle where I've managed high traffic sales environments, exceeded quota consistently, and built repeat clientele through consultative selling. That's exactly what a medical sales rep does. So that's where you want to show that. You want to illustrate that in that sentence. That's a very well scripted sentence. You don't just say, oh, I was in retail or I was in retail sales. Show that in that sentence. That shows a deeper understanding. Now the hiring manager, now when you relate that to medical sales, the hiring manager goes, wow, this person gets it. That's so important, guys. That get it factor and know how your skills translate is everything. So some of the things that also help you translate, In retail, you're always upselling. Someone comes in, they buy a pair of pants, you're trying to offer them a shirt to go with it. They buy a hat, whatever. You're trying to say, hey, by the way, these shoes I think will go great. The best reps we have are constantly upselling. Okay. And how that relates to medical sales, you're not always upselling per se, but you're penetrating an account. That's account penetration. So for instance, for a cardiologist, I used to sell a robotic ablation systems. So the bread and butter for our systems were doing VTs. So that no one was as good as us for doing a VT. But once I got a doctor to do a VT, now I have to penetrate that account more. Now, after he was comfortable doing that, then I would get him to do AVNRTs or SVTs, ATACs. And more you keep penetrating that account and getting a greater market share of that business. That's exactly what you're doing. I'm upselling. That's what you're doing in retail. You're upselling in medical sales by penetrating the account. So you got to be able to show that connection and relay that message. Next, you're going to get KPIs, your key performance initiatives, okay, or key performance indicators. That's what we have at the store. In medical sales, you got a quota. So these are both quota, guys. There's certain criteria that they have to do at the store, reaching out to customers. That, again, they have their monthly goals like we talked about. We have listed KPIs for them that they have to hit in order to get their bonus. That's exactly what you're going to have to do with your quota to get your bonus or to get a higher commission payout in medical sales, whether it's pharma or device. Diagnostics, doesn't matter. Capital equipment, distribution, all the same. You're going to get a quota. It's similar to your KPIs on the retail side. And lastly, guys, customer service. I mean, again, in medical sales, that's managing your relationships. That's everything. You can't just go in and sell a doctor and he likes your product and go, that's it, we're good. He really loves my drug. So he's going to just give that to everybody, for birth control or pain or whatever it is. And no, it's that customer service that whenever there's a question, whenever there's a need, you're always there. You're not being annoying, but you're there for them and you're addressing their needs and providing solutions. So you're always doing that in retail. Again, our same manager, the one that really does this the best. I mean, he puts his card in every bag. He's following up with them. He lets them know when new products are coming in that they may be interested in, but he knows their needs first. And then he's providing that extra, customer service, to get them to continue to buy. Okay. Next, let's talk about a clinical background. So these are your nurses, your techs, therapists. We have a ton in the academy. One is an occupational therapist right now that only has been with us a couple of weeks, and she's already hitting great strides, getting interviews and showing her transferable skills as an occupational therapist, which there are many that she has, to become an outstanding medical sales rep. So some of the things that you'll get with that clinical expertise are, your deep product knowledge. Okay. Now, obviously that's very important. Medical sales, if you don't know your product, you don't know your disease state, the doctors aren't going to continue to work with you. If they don't trust you, if they feel that you're not giving them, proven advice or data, you're making stuff up, or they ask you questions all the time and you never know the answers to, you never get back to them, they're not going to use you. So you have to have a deep clinical understanding and many clinical backgrounds, nurses, techs, therapists, all that. Obviously that's their wheelhouse. So that is a huge skill that they're going to want to see in those interviews. Obviously comfort in the OR, in a procedure room. That's key. Some of you guys haven't done this before. I was told this when I started and I thought it was bullshit until I got into my first case by myself. So one of the myths were you're going to lose 10 IQ points in your first case when you're by yourself. And I've told this story before, but for some of you haven't heard it. So I was working for Boston Scientific. I was doing a spinal cord stimulator trial, and it was my first case by myself. I literally did maybe 30 to 40 cases with other reps during training. So I felt especially a trial, it's not as invasive. They don't have to put a battery in. They don't knock the patient out. It's a pretty quick procedure. Sometimes it could be 10, 20 minutes. Anyway, by myself, I was totally calm, cool. I was there early, met with the patient, all ready to go. When we start the procedure, the doctor reaches out and I'm supposed to hand him the sterile equipment. I had a brain freeze thinking that I opened up the second layer and touched it. I opened up the sterile layer. And my mind, it was only milliseconds, I froze and literally started shaking and going, oh shit, I just ruined the product. Like if you touch it, the sterile area, that's it. You can't use that product. The procedure can't move on. So I froze for a second. The doctor was looking at me like, hand it to me. And then I just realized like, oh no, there's another package inside. And then I handed it to the doctor. Now this sounds so stupid, but it's so true. I actually got dumber in there by myself for the first time because you get so nervous. You know, when you see a patient on the table, the doctor in front of you, the staff, everyone standing around you in an operating room, this is as real as it gets, guys. And I'm not saying this to scare you because once you get good, you're going to love that. There's a rush there. But these clinical personnel, they have that OR comfort, that familiarity in the OR. That is a huge, huge plus, obviously, for medical sales. And then lastly, understanding physician workflow. I mean, that's key, guys. You know, they have a clear understanding of how it is to work with physicians, what physicians care about, you know, the right times to approach them with something. And then other times when it's more stressful situation to take a step back. And that's a great skill that sales reps, the best sales reps know what to do. So when you'll see that the top sales reps, and this even touches back on that OR familiarity and comfort, the best sales reps are quiet ones in the OR. The ones that aren't as good, they're the ones that are constantly chatting, that are constantly trying to educate, trying to throw in product knowledge. And it's like, of course you got to do that. You got to sell your product. But the ones that are cool, they're the ones that are in the most control. You know, they're not just constantly, you know, yelling to, you know, grab that one instrument, do this, you do that, whatever. I've seen this. There's like a nervous energy. Nobody wants that in the operating room. They want someone that if they have a question, you're there. It's almost like you're the instructor, you know, you're teaching, leading that class. A lot of those times in those procedures, you are the doctor. Everything's on the doctor, but all the product knowledge is on you. So the ones that are sitting back and calm, you know that they're comfortable because they've done this many times before. And that's a real skill that's very important for the operating room that you get from those clinical backgrounds. So again, good sentence to tie the two together. You know, I understand provider pain points and patient outcomes. I can translate product features into clinical impact. So let's talk about some of those transferable skills again. You know, you got to do a lot of charting, right? On the clinical side. That's similar to documentation. You do a lot of documentation in medical sales. You know, these procedures, you don't just go do the procedures, leave, and all of a sudden they send you a check. No, you're documenting all the products that you use during a case. You're documenting your call notes. You know, you're always documenting something. You're documenting, especially on the clinical side in medical sales, because you're dealing with patients' lives here, guys. It's that simple. So the same thing you're going to document, you're going to chart, you're going to document on the medical sales side. Patient education is the same as product training. You know, patient education in clinical is the same as product training on the medical sales side. No differences. It's pretty cut and dry. And lastly, care coordination, you know, is similar to territory management. You're going to have many patients. You're going to work with multiple physicians. You know, there's a lot of scheduling, a lot of workflow that you have to, you know, get used to and master to have that either that office or a hospital run smoothly. And that's the same with your territory, guys. You're going to get a bunch of hospitals. You're going to have tons of doctors, especially as you get bigger and you start to grow that business. You're going to be handling more and more customers. So to get really good at that, you need those strong skills that you get as a clinical specialist, you know, with coordinating care. You're doing the same thing as territory management. So next, let's go to a few more. Sorry. This is, sorry guys, just going to my notes. Okay. So next, focus on customer service. Okay. A lot of customer service reps out there, guys. So for a lot of you, this is similar to inside sales position. So you'll see a lot of companies. I mean, if you got to match apples to apples, they're always going to be more interested in the outside B2B sales reps. But that doesn't mean if you're an inside sales rep, you can't compete against them. But they consider inside sales and customer service as very similar roles. So a lot of you might say, I'm in customer service. I don't sell anything, Joe. That's not experience. And you're wrong. It 100% is. And here are some of the things that you actually bring to the table. Conflict resolution. I don't know one sales rep out there that hasn't had to deal with conflict resolution. And every customer service rep, that's all you guys do, is dealing with people calling you up and saying, my product sucks. How come my TV won't turn on? My internet went out. Whatever that is, that typical, I mean, this is me on the phone every day or once a week with someone in, with one of the products that is in my house, either the phone, the TV, internet, whatever. We're on the phone with customer service reps, and God bless them that they have the patience to deal with these phone calls all day. But that's what you're going to deal with in a different regard when you're walking into offices. You're going to have doctors texting you. You're going to have doctors calling you. You're going to have staff. You're going to walk in there. There's always going to be problems. Okay. And you got to resolve them. You got to resolve those conflicts. So it's a key skill that when you don't have that skill, you overreact. You get flustered. You got to be calming, and be like you've been there before. Take a breath and then handle whatever the problem is. But that's what you're constantly doing in customer service. The communication under pressure, which is similar to, handling those conflicts, and it gets stressful. You got people yelling at you all day as a customer service rep. You're going to see that in the operating room. I mean, I've seen doctors, they have torn me apart. They could be having a bad day. Who the hell knows what's going on? Sometimes it could be something I did wrong, but a lot of times it's something that's out of your control and you just got to deal with it, or a doctor could be pissed off or truly like another product. And I've had doctors say, Joe, how come your sheet is such shit? Or how come your battery is so big and the competition is so small? It's so much easier to place. Yours is a pain in the ass. Like they rip you apart in front of everyone in the operating room. I can't go back at them. I can't go, what the hell are you talking about? And get an argument with them. Obviously, you're never going to be invited back. So you got to be calm and handle those objections, in a professional and calming way to diffuse the heat in the room. Constantly doing that as a customer service rep. Relationship retention, same thing. Keep providing great customer service, whether it's over the phone or whether it's in front of your physicians, they're going to keep coming back. And then problem solving in real time. I mean, how many times you've been on the phone with that rep from Verizon that they're helping you troubleshoot your television? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but they have that patience to keep trying and trying and trying until they help get that fixed. You're going to have to do that in the operating room. And there's so many moments, guys, I have a million stories about that, but there's times that I've been in cases where my device wasn't working. The patient's on the table, the doctor now wants to close. So when we were at Boston Scientific, you'd have to input the leads into the battery. And then the doctor literally puts the battery into the pocket, which is right above the butt of the patient. And then they close, they sew up the patient. That's the end of the procedure. We have to test the connections before they close. And there's times the connections aren't matching. They're not connected. And now you have to calmly, when the doctor's looking at you like, Joe, we good? And they just want to shut it. They just want to close the patient and move on to the next case. And you're like, I'm sorry, no, we're not. Now you got to troubleshoot. And to tell you how uncomfortable that feeling is when things aren't going right or something's wrong, and you can't just go, guys, everyone stop. I don't know what the hell's wrong right now. Give me a minute to figure this out. I need everyone to shut up in the room. You can't do that. You got to sit there with that steady hand and be calm to try to figure out diagnose what that problem is though. But while a patient's on the table, very, very stressful shit, but you're constantly dealing with that in customer service. So that is a key skill that for all you out there that are doing customer service roles, realize that that's the tie-in. But you got to be able to talk about that. Don't just say I handle customer, problems in real time every day. You got to relate it to what they do in medical, just like you do in your medical sales roles. And it's specifically whatever that company sells. So if they're selling a CRM product in the cath lab, then talk about that. Just like when your pacemakers don't connect, at the end of the procedure, and that uncomfortable feeling when the doctor's looking at you. I deal with the same problems every day when I have customers and I'm helping them troubleshoot and again, frustrated on the phone. Guys, this is how you talk the transferable skills and you get these hiring managers excited because they know that you put the work in to know what you're getting yourself into. Okay. So, and here's a good way. Here's a bad sentence, which a lot of people do say, especially when they're training with us, and we help work with them to fine tune it so it sounds much more relatable to the medical sales field. Bad sentence is, I handle customer complaints. Okay. Here's what I want you to say. I resolved high stakes client issues while maintaining retention and brand trust, often de-escalating emotional charge situations. And I know that's a mouthful, but again, you don't have to say that exact thing, but realize there's much more to it than I handle customer complaints. Okay. Next, teachers. Teachers I absolutely love for the medical sales field. Number one, guys, they know how to present. I mean, that's one of the things that everybody can see right off the bat. They're constantly in front of people presenting. I don't care if they're 6-year-olds. You still have to get in front of a room and present. The first time you do that in medical sales, guys, it is very intimidating. Once you could be in a room with a doctor by himself in a lunch, or you could be in front of 50 doctors. I've actually presented in rooms of several hundred people, for different products at different, different meetings, at different trade shows, so when you get in front of those rooms and seeing all those faces look at you, the lights on you, everything, it gets intimidating, but no one better than a teacher that could be able to handle that because they're constantly doing that every day. So they know how to present. That's number one. Number two, they take complex info and they simplify it. I still remember my biology teacher from high school or my science teacher in middle school. They would take chemistry, like complex discussions, but once they simplified, those are the best teachers. That's the best sales rep. Don't think that the doctors just know everything because they're doctors. Sometimes you have to explain things in layman's terms to them. They didn't go through that training on your product, where they give a shit about every intricacy of that product. Just tell them how it works. Don't get too convoluted with all the details. We're just like, buddy, just tell me how to turn the thing on. Tell me what it does. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to get that doctor to be comfortable with you. They want things simplified too. So just like a teacher's doing every day, taking that difficult info and simplifying it, the medical sales reps have to do that too to be successful. Engaging an audience, so important, guys. I mean, this, is similar to presentation skills, but it's still very important. You can't just get up there and just go through the features and benefits of your product, blah, 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 blah. You're going to bore the shit out of your audience. They're not going to listen. You're going to see people, especially during lunches, where they're eating, they're not even looking at you. They're talking to other people. I mean, there's clear signs when you're not engaging your audience. It is very important to have that skill if you want to be successful in this field. And then just, accountability, performance accountability. Teachers get graded all the time. They have their whatever department heads or whoever they are, they come in, they observe them, they get progress reports. This is all you're going to get in medical too. You're going to do ride-alongs with your boss, and they're going to give you a CPR, which is a coaching progress report. Okay. And you got to do well because your coaching progress reports are going to affect your end of the year bonus. So you want to make sure you're doing that well to to get the most amount of money possible. Same with teachers. They get annual raises. If their progress reports aren't up, they're not going to get the bump, or the 3 or 5% bump, whatever it is every year. If they're not getting good ratings, they might have to, and especially if they're not tenured, then they have to worry about their job. So same thing, guys. It's about that performance, which goes pretty much for most roles out there, but it's very important for both teaching and medical sales. So again, bad sentence versus a good sentence. Bad, I taught 7th grade science. Good sentence, I delivered structured educational programs to diverse audiences, adapting messaging for comprehension and engagement. That's more impactful, guys. That's more specific of what you do as a teacher. Don't minimize what you do. That's the takeaway, no matter what your background is, guys. Don't minimize what you do. Be proud of what you do, and then be confident in how these skills are helping you become a better medical sales candidate. Lastly, and then we'll take some questions. Servers, bartenders, busboys, waiters, outstanding background for medical sales. Okay. One of the first things, upselling, just like those retail personnel that we talked about. When they come in for a shirt, they're trying to sell you pants too. How many times that you go into a restaurant and the best waiters are getting you to have a drink before, because they're explaining the new cocktail they have on the menu, or they're talking about this new special appetizer at the end with dessert. Oh, you got to try our chocolate cake. Everyone loves it. And then the bad waiters, they just come and take your order. It's the same as a medical sales rep. Like I talked about that example before. If they're using us for one procedure, now once I get that account penetration, I want to keep upselling them to use us for more and more procedures until I get 100% of their business. So it's the same thing. That upselling is key. Multitasking under pressure. So a lot of you might think that you get into medical sales and all you do is you go into operating rooms, you work with doctors, then they buy your product, and then you get your bonus checks. Guys, it's so much more complicated. You wear so many hats. There's times that you're covering cases. Then there's times you're selling to physicians. Then there's times you're dealing with patients and challenges. Then you're dealing with product issues. Then you're coming home and doing expense reports. Then you're doing the reports that are requested from your manager. You're filling out Excel spreadsheets. It's constant, other bullshit, for lack of a better term, that you have to deal with if you want to do well in this position. So sometimes you don't want to do that. You don't want to do your expense report. You don't want to do whatever Excel spreadsheet your manager is asking for, but you have to, guys. Okay. So the same thing when you're as a waiter. I mean, I know that, a lot of people that haven't waited before, like, it's so easy. You just take down the order and just, when the food comes out, you give it to them. It's not that simple, guys. There's so many times that you're handling multiple tables at once. Everyone's not ordering at the same time, or sometimes they are. It makes it difficult to get to every table. Then you're going back to get the food, and then someone says, I dropped my fork. Can you take this? Oh, by the way, someone just spilled this all over my dress. Can you give me a napkin? Like, there's so much other shit that goes on that you got to handle all those, that multitasking at once. You can't say, hey, give me 10 minutes. When I get to you, I'll get to you. No, you got to handle all your customers. Same thing in the operating room. Same thing. The busier you get in your territories, you're going to get a lot of requests, and you got to know how to multitask. Attention to detail and memory. Okay. That's key too. I mean, I know waiters, one of my buddies, he literally could take a table of 12 to 15 people, appetizers, entrees, desserts, drinks, everything, doesn't write one thing down. I can never do that. When I was a waiter back in the day, I always had my little notepad, and unless it was anything more than 4 people, I'm writing the shit down. I don't want to forget, which is fine too, but it's a very, very important skill because there's going to be a lot of information thrown at you guys. You can't always open up your training manual when you're in cases. You're going to have so much info at first that you're going to be overwhelmed. They always say you feel like you're drinking out of a fire hose, and it's true. When you first start, you're like, how the hell am I going to learn all this? I got to learn the whole cardiac system in a couple of weeks. And then doctors are going to ask me tough questions. So there's a lot that you have to learn. and be able to retain and memorize too. There's a lot that you're going to memorize, but you're going to be learning it too. So very similar on both sides. So don't downplay that you're just a waiter. So again, last sentence that we'll go over. I wait tables. Instead, I manage high volume client interactions while driving upsell revenue and maintaining service quality under time constraints. Okay. That is more descriptive of what you do. Don't downplay it. I wait tables. Okay. And last thing I just want to leave you guys with is a 3-step plan, to answer and address these transition conversations. So to really give the skill transition framework and show your transferable skills, you want to do 3 things. Number 1, identify the skill. 2, quantify it. And 3, reframe it to the medical sales side. Okay, so identifying the skill, whether it's communication, influence, closing, education, conflict resolution. Okay, those are some of the skills that you want to identify. Now you want to quantify it, So if you're in retail, don't just say, I worked with customers. How much volume was that? What was the revenue? What was your ranking? What was your performance? And lastly, what was your retention rate? These are just some of the quantifiable terms that you want to use when you talk about this. And then lastly, you want to reframe it to the medical sales side. So use the industry language. Talk about territories. Talk about accounts, stakeholders, product adoption, training, ROI, clinical value. When you tie it together, guys, that is the key. I had to upsell many customers to hit my KPIs in the retail store. I had to upsell, I was ranked number 1 I was a number 1 server at our restaurant because I upselled all our appetizers, desserts, entrees to be to have the highest per person purchase rate of $45 a person to the $26 average of the average waiter in the hospital, in the restaurant. Again, similar to in medical sales, where you have to constantly upsell and penetrate those accounts to increase your rankings. Whatever it is, tie it back into medical. Don't just say what you do. Make sure you're tying it back in. Okay? Because when you're on these calls, guys, when you're networking, and this is the important piece that we'll stop with and we'll handle some questions. When they're telling you the challenges, when you're talking to these reps, there's an opening at Medtronic or Stryker, whatever it is, you're asking them, what are some of the challenges that you're faced with? What are some of the objections? And then they can tell you, say, access. And you don't just go, oh, that's interesting, access, and write it down in your notes. Anything else? No. Go, oh, I totally understand that. I know access is a major problem. We had tremendous access issues when I was at ADP to try to get in front of the decision makers. What I did to overcome access was make a full office call and reach out to some of the other individuals that weren't the decision makers, but they can help me get to that decision maker so I can bypass a lot of those access issues that you deal with. And I was able to grow my territory by 300% by doing blah, blah, blah. Like that is how you answer that. Show them that you're not just there to take notes. Show them that you're there to be the solution. There's a big difference, guys. You got to illustrate that when you're having these phone calls with these other reps. Don't just make it the on the scene reporter just asking questions and taking notes. No, you got to provide a solution because they're not going to go back to their manager and say, this guy's great. They're going to forget about you. So make yourself memorable. Make them go back to that hiring manager. Go, God, this guy Joe. I know he's a waiter, doesn't have that sales background, but I mean, he's handling a lot of the same challenges that we're handling every day, and he was able to illustrate that, which I thought was so impressive. So that is key, guys. Make sure that you're relating it back to what you did in your past and how you provide a solution. I'm going to stop talking for a sec. James, any questions?
We got a ton of questions, Joe. And that waiter was probably serving you up, selling you all those desserts.
100%. He didn't have to worry about it. I just told him, I just made it easier and said, here's what you shouldn't bring me.
We got Jake Manuel. Hey, Joe, what do you do if I have 5+ years of experience and I'm not breaking all the way through in these interviews?
Yeah, well, Jake's a great candidate. I know Jake personally. Jake, you're doing a great job. First off, I know how Jake's doing with these interviews. He's got interviews, multiple interviews right now. He's just doing an outstanding job. So it's the piece of advice though, Jake, is, you want to first off try to get the feedback if you can. It's not always easy because a lot of these companies, they're handcuffed where they don't give information because they're afraid for legalities later on. But find out what went wrong. Find out what happened, but constantly work on your skills. If you feel, you're saying it now, that you're having interview prep issues, then you got to work on that. What are the questions in the interview that you felt stumped you? I mean, we all leave these interviews. Sometimes we're like, I think it went great. And meanwhile, you don't hear back. But there are a lot of times when you're like, oh man, I screwed up that question. I didn't even know what the hell I was saying. Believe me, if you didn't know what you were saying, they didn't know what the hell you were saying either. But you want to take those notes and work on it no matter what it is. So constantly, if it's interview prep, then that's what you constantly work on to get better, and you're going to see the results.
We have strategically, Joe, when you're transitioning, do you think it's smarter to target smaller companies that might take a chance on you or go straight for the big names like Stryker, Medtronic, J&J?
It depends. So if in a perfect world, I recommend that you go to a big company first, because the big company is going to give you that. Odds are they're going to give you great training and great support. When you first come out and you work for a mom and pop, that's great too. But when you compare the two, not every time, but most mom and pops, they're not going to train you and be able to provide all that sales support that you do with the big companies. I mean, a lot of smaller medical companies that are mom and pops, they don't even have detail aids. You literally go in there, whatever your product is, this is your product. You walk in there and just go, all right, doc, here's what I'm selling. This is what it does. Here's what it costs. Here are the features and benefits, whatever. And that's all you got to work with. But when you got companies, they give you laptops, they give you iPads, they give you all this promotional material. They give you everything. If there's a question, there's 50 different people in the home office you can call. Marketing issues, you contact marketing. If there's a clinical issue or a technical issue, you can call it sales support, technical support. They just have everything covered to make your job as easy as possible. So I would recommend, if you have a choice, go to the bigger companies first. But that doesn't mean I want you to ignore the smaller ones. Go to a company. You have to have a reason, some reason why you want to work there. Something that interests you at that company, and then go for it. Whether it's big or small, don't shy away from either. But I just don't want you to just reach out to thousands of companies sending your resume. I want you to put more time in less companies and a smaller focus, because that's how you're going to be successful. But really, it doesn't matter. But if you want that support and everything, then a big company is probably the way to go first.
We got Christina Andrasova. Hi, Joe. How would you highlight your hospitality sales experience server in those interviews? Examples of upselling seem to be put in the shadows for me. Did you recently hear a story on hospitality business and really stuck with you?
Okay. I didn't really understand that last part, but I'll do my best. So you're asking me to give you a specific upselling story. I mean, is that what we're talking?
I can reread it. It's there's some misspelling, so it's kind of hard to.
If you can, because I want to make sure I answer correctly.
I'll put it up on the screen so you can see it as well. Hi, Joe. How would you highlight your hospitality sales experience? Server in those interviews, examples of upselling seem to be put in the shadows for me. Did you recently hear a story of a hospitality business that really stuck with you? So stuck with you, I'm guessing is what they.
Yeah. I mean, the main things are this, guys. You're, as a server, there's many stories that we have. There's stories of, again, you're going up, you're constantly upbeat. you're bringing energy. How many times have you had a waiter? Now, James, I'm going to give you a good movie reference.
Let's go.
A lot of people might not know this because they're young like you are. You were probably friggin', I don't know, like 10 years old when this came out, but Office Space.
What do you
Right?
mean? Of course I know Office Space,
All right.
Joe.
Well, you
Come on.
weren't 20 when it came out. You were probably like 8 or 9. Came out in 99.
Yeah, I was 11.
Okay. There you go. All right. You probably weren't allowed to see it. Anyway, in that movie, the pain in the ass guy that has like his 37 things of flair and he comes up and he's all energetic, and Jennifer Aniston's character is just like, she doesn't even want to be there. She
Mhm.
just does the minimum. Now, obviously, most of us would want Jennifer Aniston to wait on us than that, annoying guy. But in the movie, he brings energy. He brings that energy, and that's why he's the top waiter. When you go out to a restaurant, I'm not saying you want that annoying guy with you, but you like the guy that brings energy, that's smiling, that's energetic, that's happy. You don't want the person like, hey man, can I take your order? So that's a huge skill when it comes to medical sales, when it comes to interviewing. You got to come in with that energy. And a lot of the great waiters that I know have that great energy. That's so important. On top of the upselling, on top of the handling, customer challenges and complaints, objections that you're going to hear. I mean, there's so many connections, but for me, one of the things that really stands out are those waiters that bring that energy, because that's the kind of rep that you want. You want that positive rep, that rep that's always smiling. I mean, you guys, you could point them out when you see them in a hospital. They're dressed nice. They got a smile on their face. They're usually put together nicely. Hair's combed right. They're not a mess. They're not depressed. They're not walking around with their shoulders down, because nobody's going to want to work with someone like that. They want someone that brings that positive energy. And that's what a lot of good waiters do. So that's what I would take away from that.
Well, Joe, to be fair, I'd take a miserable Jen Aniston over a high energy server 10 times out of 10. I'm sorry
Yes.
to break it to you.
Yes.
Yeah. But yes,
but it would be even better if if there were two Jennifer Aniston's and one is depressed and doesn't want to be there versus the one with the energy. Obviously, that's who we're going with, the higher energy person.
I want horrible bosses, Jen Aniston. That's what I want.
Yes, let's go. That was probably her best movie.
Great movie. I wish I could have a boss like that. Too bad I have Nick. Real talk, Rita. Joe, nobody talks about this, but what about the physical demands? I'm coming from a desk job in software sales. How different is the day-to-day when you're lugging around equipment and standing in ORs for hours?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously that's different. That's one aspect that's different. But you got to look at all the similarities in what you're doing, that match what it is in medical sales. If you're just comparing, I'm sitting down in a chair versus standing up in an OR, of course there's a difference. But you got to focus on, I don't know the specifics in your role as your desk job, but again, customer service, that's a desk job where someone's sitting in a chair. But there's so much more that they're doing. Again, they're handling objections. That is a huge thing that you need to do in medical sales. So don't look at the most opposite parts of your job between standing in an OR to sitting in a desk chair. Look at the similarities first, and then be able to, talk through your transferable skills.
I got future CJ88. I have a friend who got into med sales through a distribution company first. Is that a legit path, or does it look bad on a resume compared to going direct manufacturer?
No, it does not look bad. That's a great path. Actually, distribution sales, I did a post the other day about this. A lot of you out there, you always are focused on med device and pharma, which is understandable. I mean, that's what most people talk about, device and pharma. There's a lot of distribution companies out there that are more willing to hire people with less experience. So for instance, a lot of individuals that don't have college degrees, don't have a sales background, they can get hired by a distributor because a lot of times the distributors can be smaller mom and pop companies. So for instance, Arthrex, amazing company. Me and James I've used this example in the past. We could start our own distributorship, Joe and James, LLC, and be the distributor of Arthrex products. So now we have an area, defined territory, physicians that we can call on, and we, can have our own little distribution company for Arthrex products. So when we're hiring sales reps, me and James could just say, hey, I like this girl. She's great. I love her energy. I love what she brings to the table. She's got spunk. She's, great personality. She's got fire, hard work ethic. Let's hire her. I don't care what her background is. And that happens a lot, so I 100%, if you're just trying to break in, and definitely keep distribution open as a path, because a lot of times some of these distribution companies, you're working with multiple products, which means you're calling on multiple specialties. That is key, guys. All right. You want to start building your relationships in multiple therapeutic areas. If you could get as many relationships as you can in different therapeutic areas, because then more companies are going to reach out to you. Oh, Joe, you worked with cardiologists. Oh, wow. I got it. Here's an amazing opportunity with Medtronic. Oh, Joe, you worked in neurology. Here's another great opportunity with XYZ company. I mean, those specialties and those relationships are going to help catapult you to your next career move, the further you get down. So distribution, awesome avenue to take.
I got, where'd it go?
Getting old, dude.
I know. Carla Nelson, what about age? I'm 41 and I'm thinking about making a switch from pharmaceutical sales to device. Am I too old for companies to want to invest in training me?
No, 100% not. I mean, you got to realize too, it was Carla, don't look at your age and make that as an excuse. Cause I get this all the time. I work with candidates all around the country that tell me, Joe, I'm 40, Joe, I'm 50, Joe, I'm 60. That's why no one's hiring me. And they're beat up. And then you start working with them and you're like, okay, well, your resume needs a total overhaul that that you probably are ignoring. You're just concentrating on your age. When we do interview prep, you don't understand, you're not handling these questions well. You're not handling the objections in an interview. You're not presenting your skills well. I mean, there's so many other things that are typically the reason. Age, of course, there can always be a company out there that they're not going to disclose to me or anyone else, but say, hey guys, we just want to hire younger people because we want to train them. And that can happen sometimes. But overall, there's many outstanding individuals that come from other backgrounds in their 40s and transition into medical sales. The reality is, though, you have to make sure that you know what you're getting into. If you're 41, you got 4 kids at home, they play, 20 sports, and there are 20 activities a week, and you want to try to be at these things, and you're taking on a medical sales role that you're going to be in the OR 12 hours a day, you got to really realize what you're getting into. So that might not be for you, and that might not be why you take the role. And also it might be the way you're answering the questions in the role when they ask you about commitment and can you do this job, and they start hearing that you're a single mom with 4 kids and you got to be at your kids' games. Okay, that might create some challenges, but you just got to know what you're getting into. And if you're willing to put that sacrifice in, then you definitely can break in. So don't be intimidated. And 41 is young. I'm 47, so that's a baby to me.
Yeah, you're an old man, dude.
Yeah.
Falling apart over here.
Yeah. That's why I shaved to look a little younger.
Baby face assassin.
I'm a chia pet, dude. By Friday, I'll have a full beard again.
I'm the same way, dude. We got Ryan Q. Should I be getting any certifications before I apply? I keep seeing people mention things like CNPR. Is that actually helpful or just a money grab?
Okay. The only one you should be getting on your resume is the RepPath Academy. And I really mean that because we're going to help you break in. We're going to give you the skills to become a better candidate. That's simple. And by putting that on your resume, it's not about having that degree. It's not about having the RepPath Academy degree. It's showing that hiring manager that this is what you do to own your development. You're owning your own development. That is such a key phrase, guys. You always want to let them know that you own your own development. And that means you don't wait for someone else to train you. You don't wait for someone else to tell you what to do. You want something, you go out and get it. And that's what you're doing with the RepPath Academy. You're investing in yourself. You're trying to gain skills and not waiting for a company to hire you to give you those skills. You're going to get it. They love that, guys, because that's the kind of individual they want at their company. They want sales reps that go out and get it. They don't wait for things to happen. Those are always the best sales reps. So that's why you want to get it on there. As for the CMPR, for all you out there that have got this, I don't want to make anyone upset. It is completely useless. And for the CMPR people, sorry to piss you off, but I got to keep it real. I've never had a company say, Joe, I really like this rep, but they don't have their CMPR. Okay. Just remember, guys, learning that, some terminology, that's good. And it's good to put it on your resume, but do it to show them that you own your own development, because at the end of the day, they're still going to train you. I don't care who you are. You could be a physician that's transitioning, you could be a cardiologist that's transitioning for a cardiac medical sales role. They're still going to train you. They're not going to take any chances and say, no, he's a doctor. He knows all this shit, so just throw him out there. No, there's still so many things you have to learn about the product and everything else. It's not just about the anatomy. So no one has ever said, I want a CMPR. It doesn't happen. If you want to get it, good for you, but put it on your resume more as a talking point about owning your own development.
I got Kim Stevenson. I've been planning on quitting my retail job for months now while I figure out my next move. Joe, how much runway should someone have saved up before making the leap into med sales?
How much runway should you have?
I'm
If
guessing
you're planning on leaving and you want to start now. I mean, again, start now. It doesn't matter. You don't know how long it's going to take. You want to, I would, if you don't want to be somewhere, why wait? What are you going to wait another month or two and then start looking? If you're unhappy, then leave, or start looking now, preparing to leave. So there is no runway time. I mean, the average rep, that doesn't go through the RepPath Academy, because we're averaging around 10 weeks to help people break in from when they start with us to when they get in. But the average in the industry is 8 to 10 months. So if you want to go by the industry average, then, you're looking at 8 to 10 months. Working with us, obviously it's much quicker, but depending on your circumstances. But I would just simply start today. Just get out there and start looking and start working on your skills for their next move.
I have Erica Johnson. Spent 6 years getting my master's in healthcare administration, and now I realize I want to be in sales, not administration. Was that degree a complete waste, or can I leverage it somehow?
It wasn't a complete waste, but again, you want to be a sales rep now. So they're going to want to see that you know how to sell. So just talk about your transferable skills, what you learned as a healthcare administrator that can make you an effective sales rep. And that's understanding. For instance, I know many healthcare administrators, they understand a lot about reimbursement. That's something that a lot of sales reps aren't that good at. There's some that are great out there, but a lot of them, they don't have a full understanding of reimbursements. They might know some details, but you should know a little bit more about that being an administrative role, having a full understanding of how hospitals work and what really drives them. Knowing some of those drivers is key when you're selling products, because that can make you a very effective rep when you're meeting with a VP of the department, or sometimes you're meeting with a CFO or other hospital administrators. You know how to talk their language to get your product to get approved. So definitely great background. And it could be applied, but you just got to talk about those transferable skills.
We got Becca Yurgata, I guess. How honest should I be in interviews about why I want to leave my current industry? Like, if I say the money and lifestyle is better in med sales, is that a turnoff?
It's got to be more specific than that. You're talking about all the bells and whistles that everyone loves, the money, the working with doctors, the freedom, the car. No, guys, it's got to be deeper than that. You don't always, one quick rule, guys, when you're leaving something, don't talk about the negatives of your past and why you're leaving. You're talking about the positives of the future of why you want to go to XYZ company. That's how you handle that question. Talk about what that specific company gets you excited. Why do you want to work there? Is it working in cardiology? And you know, your friend or a family member had a cardiac event and you saw how this product helped save their lives. You want to be a part of that. You want to be a part of saving lives, working for an outstanding company like Medtronic. That's more of what you want to hear. Not, I love that you get a $600 a month car allowance, or you guys are going to pay for my expenses. Like, those are ridiculous answers. It's got to be specific of what that company offers and what gets you excited about it, and then talk about that. But don't ever talk about the negatives of your past of why you're leaving. It's about the positives of the future.
We got Miguel Aranjo. I went back and got my MBA specifically to help with the transition to med sales. Do hiring managers actually care about the MBA, or do they just want to see that you can sell?
Unfortunately for sales roles, it typically is not going to matter that much. When you're going for promotable positions in marketing, more administrative levels, an MBA does help. So don't look at it like, oh, I just wasted on the MBA. But if you're going to go in there and just keep talking about your MBA and how that's going to make you an effective sales rep, no, it's not. At the end of the day, they care about results. But again, you could talk about your MBA for continuing and owning your own development and continuing to improve upon that. Then that's different. But just putting an MBA down and thinking that's going to make you a better sales candidate for an entry-level sales role, no, it's not.
I got Cowboys fan Steph77. Real question. Is it worth taking a lower level role like an associate rep just to get in the door? Or does that pigeonhole you?
1000% does not pigeonhole you. That's how most reps start. So if it's a clinical specialist role or an associate role, take it. Do what you can to get in. And then as you build your skills, as you show what an effective associate or clinical specialist you are, the promotions will come. You'll get the opportunities to be a territory manager and make substantially more. But most reps, trust me, guys, when you get in some of these fields in medical sales, you need 6 months to a year to really understand what you're doing, selling a new product in a new environment. You don't want to be a TM right away. You don't want to get out there and just say, I'm a TM, this is awesome. And then you get out there, you don't know what you're doing. You're learning a whole new therapeutic area, and then you got to hit a number on top of it in a new territory. There's a lot. So you want to crawl before you walk. And those roles are great roles because there's clinical specialists first year making around 100,000, 2 years down the line, they're making 350. They're out there. So do those roles first. Definitely don't look at that as it's a negative in any means. That's how most reps start. I think we might have time for one more.
I was just going to say, do we have time for one more?
One more.
Nick Erickson, do you think it's worth paying for a professional resume writer who specializes in med sales, or is that a waste of money?
1000%. If you work with us at RepPath, it is not a waste of money. We do this every day, guys. It's part of the RepPath Academy. It's part of our program. Because a lot of times, more than happy to work with individuals to help them optimize their resume, and that's it. But more often than not, there's many more areas that you're overlooking that need to get fixed for you to become a better candidate. For instance, I get that a lot. Joe, I think it's my resume. And then they work with us and we realize it was their resume. It was their LinkedIn profile. It was the way they prep for interviews. They didn't know how to answer a lot of questions. They weren't closing correctly. They weren't networking correctly. There's so many other areas, but we 100%, we've done this thousands and thousands of times, especially with resume optimization. We can help you with that. But more importantly, throughout the RepPath Academy, we can help you with that and everything else. So please reach out.
Well, that's all we got today, Joe.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. A lot of great questions. Thank you, James, for handling all those. I appreciate it, buddy. And guys, again, just one more reminder, just how we were just leaving off on the RepPath Academy. If you're struggling, if you're not where you want to be, stop waiting. Things aren't going to change, guys. Don't think, well, I've only been doing this 2 months, but by month 4 or 5, if I just keep at it, things are going to start working. No, you need a strategy. You need a plan. A lot of you, when you're out there, you feel like you're left on an island. That's how I felt. That's why I created this, because I didn't want reps to have to go through what I did and learn the hard way and spend more time trying to, make myself a better candidate. we have a full structured plan that's going to help you get there. So please go on RepPath.com or shoot me a DM on LinkedIn, to learn more about the RepPath Academy. For all you candidates out there, again, that are lobby members, please go and when you reach out to me, either through through LinkedIn or through my email, joe@reppath.com, please submit the promo code Licata, Licata, which will get you additional discounts. So those for all lobby members. Other than that, guys, thank you so much. This is a great week. As always, we'll be here every Monday and Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So if I don't speak to any of you, have a great weekend, and we'll talk on Monday. Take care, guys.